Did you know that just by eating the wrong kind of nut, something that seemed completely harmless, 67-year-old William, a man who walked every morning and ate clean, nearly ended up in the hospital from a sudden spike in blood pressure? He truly believed he was doing everything right. Every afternoon, he'd grab a small handful of nuts as a healthy snack, something better than chips or cookies. His doctor once told him, nuts are great for your heart, your brain, even your digestion. And he believed that, just like so many of us do. But here's the truth. Not all nuts are created equal. And after 60, your body starts to change, quietly. Your digestion slows, your metabolism shifts, your liver doesn't detox like it used to. Suddenly, some of the nuts that were once safe become silent threats. A multi-year study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found regularly eating the wrong nuts can increase your risk of heart disease by up to 48%, especially if you're over 60. And what's even more alarming? The most dangerous nut of all? It's one that most Americans think is healthy. In fact, it shows up in nearly every low-carb meal plan. But it can slowly damage your liver, kidneys, and brain, bit by bit, day by day. That's why in this video, we're going on a journey together to uncover 4 nuts you should be eating every day, for a healthier heart, stronger bones, and a sharper mind. 4 seemingly innocent nuts that may secretly be undermining your health. And at the end, I'll show you how to build a smart nut-eating habit, one that actually works for people over 60. And now, I want to invite you, yes, you watching this video, to imagine yourself sitting at your kitchen table, right in front of your usual snack jar. Do you really know which of those nuts are helping you live longer, and which might be silently shortening your health span? Let's find out, right now. You'll never look at your snack mix the same way again. 1. The 48% heart risk you didn't know about. William had always been someone who paid attention to his health. After retiring, he took up daily walks, stayed away from fried food, and swapped soda for herbal tea. Like many older adults trying to age well, he added a small bowl of mixed nuts to his afternoon routine. He felt good about it. After all, nuts are heart healthy, right? But then came the routine checkup. His doctor raised an eyebrow at his blood pressure readings. His cholesterol was higher than expected, too. William was puzzled. He hadn't changed anything. He was still walking. Still eating his veggies. Still snacking on nuts. So they took a closer look. Turned out, William's snack jar was filled mostly with peanuts, roasted, salted, and stored in a warm pantry. He had been eating them daily, sometimes twice a day. What he didn't realize was that peanuts, although technically legumes, are prone to mold and can carry a toxin called aflatoxin, known to cause liver stress and inflammation. Over time, the constant exposure had quietly been working against his heart health. According to a long-term study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, adults over 60 who regularly consumed certain high-risk nuts showed up to a 48% increase in heart disease risk. The danger wasn't just about fat or calories, it was the way certain compounds in nuts interacted with aging bodies. Hidden inflammation. Poor nutrient absorption. Silent pressure on the liver and arteries. William didn't feel sick. There were no warning signs. That's what made it scary. This is something we see far too often. People doing their best, making choices they believe are healthy, but missing one key detail: the body after 60 plays by a different set of rules. What supported heart health at 40 might stress it at 70. And that's the lesson. Even healthy habits need to evolve as we age. Especially the small ones. The handful of nuts we reach for without thinking. So what should we reach for instead? Let's start by looking at one of the most underrated, yet powerful nuts for people over 60, one that helps your bones, your brain, and even your gut stay strong. Let's talk about almonds. 2. Almonds, the underrated bone and brain saver. When Margaret turned 70, her biggest fear wasn't memory loss or fatigue. It was falling. She had seen what a single fall could do. Her older sister, Linda, had broken her hip at 73 and never fully recovered. Margaret didn't want that to happen to her. So she did what most seniors are told to do. She took her calcium supplements every morning, drank her milk, and hoped for the best. But her doctor, a thoughtful woman in her early 40s, gently asked her one day, "Have you ever thought about getting your calcium from almonds instead?" Margaret was surprised. Almonds? She had always thought of them as a snack, something to toss on a salad. She never imagined they could help keep her bones from breaking. But they can. And in many cases, they're even better than supplements. Just a quarter cup of almonds contains nearly 100 milligrams of calcium, alongside magnesium, which is essential for helping that calcium actually make it into your bones, not just float around in your bloodstream. It's this combination that makes almonds so powerful, especially for people over 60. Our bodies get less efficient with age. Nutrients don't absorb the way they used to. Bones become more porous, more fragile. But almonds don't just stop at bone strength. They're also rich in vitamin E and protective antioxidants that shield brain cells from damage. Researchers at Tufts University found that almonds may help slow cognitive decline by reducing oxidative stress in the brain, something we all face more of as we get older. And the fiber in almonds? That helps keep digestion regular, which, if we're being honest, becomes more of a concern the older we get. Margaret made a simple change. She started adding 15 almonds to her breakfast each morning, unsalted, still with the skin on, just as her doctor suggested. After a few months, she noticed she felt steadier. Her digestion was better. And maybe it was just confidence, but she felt sharper, too. She still enjoys her morning coffee, her crossword puzzles, but now, her almond jar sits right next to her teacup. A small shift, but one that gave her a sense of control. That's the beauty of almonds. They're not flashy. But they work quietly in the background, supporting the systems that matter most as we age. So if you're wondering where to start, start small. Start with almonds. But if you're ready to take the next step for your brain, let me show you a nut that's even shaped like the brain, and might just be its best friend. Let's talk about walnuts. 3. Walnuts versus cashews, the ultimate brain battle. Paul had always been sharp. A retired engineer with a mind for details, he loved puzzles, strategy games, and reading biographies. But in his early 70s, he started noticing small slips, forgetting names, misplacing his glasses, losing track of conversations halfway through. He chalked it up to normal aging, until one day, after forgetting an old friend's name mid-sentence, he decided to do something about it. He started reading about brain foods, and one article after another recommended nuts. So Paul added a handful of cashews to his lunch each day. They were creamy, satisfying, and easy to snack on. It felt like a smart, healthy choice. But weeks passed, and he didn't feel sharper. In fact, he sometimes felt more sluggish after eating. A nutritionist friend suggested he take a closer look. Here's what they found. While cashews are tasty, they're not the best for brain health, especially for older adults. They're relatively high in carbohydrates, about 9 grams per ounce, which can spike blood sugar and cause energy crashes. They also contain compounds called oxalates, which can interfere with nutrient absorption, particularly calcium and magnesium, both essential for nerve function. Cashews also have enzyme inhibitors, which make it harder to digest protein efficiently. That's not a big deal for younger folks, but after 60, digestion slows, and every bit of protein counts. Now, compare that with walnuts. Walnuts are packed with alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 that helps reduce inflammation in the brain. They're also rich in polyphenol, powerful antioxidants that cross the blood-brain barrier and protect brain cells directly. And yes, their shape is no coincidence. That brain-like curve? It's nature's little nudge. In one study from the Journal of Nutrition, seniors who ate 1.5 ounces of walnuts daily for 8 weeks showed noticeable improvement in cognitive processing speed and memory flexibility. That's not just theory. That's measurable change. So Paul made the switch. He replaced his midday cashew snack with a few walnut halves, added them to his oatmeal, and even crushed them into a pesto. A month later, he wasn't just remembering names again, he felt more mentally alert, more present. That's the lesson here. Some foods make us feel full. Others make us feel focused. After 60, the difference becomes even more important. So next time you're reaching into the snack jar, remember, just because something tastes good doesn't mean it's feeding your brain. And if brain health is only part of the puzzle, what about something even more immediate, like your blood pressure? Let's look at a nut that may quietly be the best ally for your heart: pistachios. 4. Pistachios, the hidden helper for blood pressure and vision. When Ruth turned 68, she started noticing two things. First, her blood pressure numbers were creeping higher, even though she hadn't changed much in her diet. And second, she was squinting more often when reading her favorite mystery novels. Her doctor called it normal aging, a phrase Ruth had come to quietly resent. But Ruth wasn't one to accept decline without a fight. So she started making small adjustments. She walked a bit more. She cut back on processed foods. And, almost by accident, she discovered pistachios. Her grandson had brought over a bag of them one afternoon, and as they sat together watching an old movie, she began shelling them, one by one. The rhythm was relaxing. The taste was rich but gentle. And soon enough, pistachios became a regular part of her routine. What she didn't realize at first was just how powerful that little habit could be. Pistachios are one of the best nuts you can eat for healthy blood pressure. They're rich in potassium, nearly 300 milligrams per ounce, and naturally low in sodium. That balance helps counteract the body's tendency to retain salt, especially as we age. For someone like Ruth, whose blood pressure had been climbing slowly over the years, pistachios offer gentle, natural support. But that's not all. Pistachios also contain lutein and zeaxanthin, two carotenoids that directly protect the eyes, specifically the macula, which is responsible for central vision. Age-related macular degeneration is one of the leading causes of vision loss in people over 60, but foods rich in these compounds can help slow its progression. And perhaps most beautifully, pistachios are easy to eat slowly. The act of shelling them creates a mindful moment. It's not just about the nut, it's the pause, the presence, the pace. For Ruth, those little green gems became a ritual. A bowl of pistachios while reading in the afternoon sun. A quiet way to take care of her body, her eyes, and her peace of mind, all at once. Here's the quiet lesson pistachios teach us. Sometimes the best health choices are the ones that feel gentle, unforced, even joyful. So, if you're looking for a nut that helps lower blood pressure without medication, and might even help you keep reading without stronger glasses, pistachios might just be your perfect match. But there's another nut we haven't talked about yet. One that doesn't just support parts of your body, but something even deeper, your entire metabolism and mood. Let's talk about the smallest dose with the biggest impact: Brazil nuts. 5. Brazil nuts and selenium, a little goes a long way. Every morning, Thomas would open his pill organizer, Monday through Sunday neatly labeled, and swallow a handful of supplements with his tea. Multivitamins, fish oil, something for joints, something for energy. He didn't mind it. But he always wondered, is all this actually working? One day, while chatting with his daughter, a dietitian, she pointed to something simple in his kitchen cabinet, a small bag of Brazil nuts. You know, she said, just one of these might do more for your thyroid and mood than half those pills. Thomas raised an eyebrow. One nut? But that's the magic of Brazil nuts. They're the richest natural source of selenium, a trace mineral that plays a critical role in thyroid function. Just one single Brazil nut contains more than your entire daily requirement. Selenium helps convert thyroid hormones into their active form, supporting everything from your energy levels to metabolism and even emotional balance. For older adults, this matters more than ever. As we age, thyroid function can slow down quietly, leading to fatigue, weight gain, low mood, and brain fog. Often, these symptoms are brushed off as just getting older. But sometimes, they're a whisper from your thyroid asking for help. And unlike synthetic supplements, the selenium in Brazil nuts comes with healthy fats, antioxidants, and fiber, all of which support absorption and reduce inflammation. It's not just a pill, it's food that nourishes. Thomas started small. Just one Brazil nut with his breakfast. Not 2. Not 3. Just 1. Within a few weeks, he noticed small changes. His energy in the mornings felt more steady. His mood lifted. Even his digestion improved, thanks to the fiber and healthy oils. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. The lesson here is one many of us forget. More isn't always better. Sometimes, just enough is perfect. Brazil nuts are powerful, but they're also potent. Too much selenium can actually be harmful, especially if you're already taking supplements. So stick to 1 or 2 per day. That's all you need. So far, we've talked about the nuts that nourish, the quiet protectors of heart, brain, bones, and hormones. But what about the ones we think are healthy, but really aren't? Let's start peeling back the truth with one of America's favorite snacks, peanuts. The risks might surprise you. 6. Peanuts, America's favorite. But at what cost? It's hard to find a kitchen in America without a jar of peanut butter or a bag of peanuts tucked somewhere in the pantry. For many of us, it's more than just food, it's comfort. A spoonful of peanut butter on toast. A snack during the game. A little bowl of roasted peanuts next to the recliner. And that's exactly how Frank, 72, had enjoyed his peanuts for years. He'd always believed they were a healthy choice, full of protein, satisfying, and better than chips. He even switched to peanut butter on whole grain bread instead of lunch meat, thinking he was doing his heart a favor. But during a routine liver function test, something came back off. His doctor wasn't alarmed, but concerned enough to ask questions. And when Frank mentioned how often he ate peanuts, the conversation took a turn. Here's what most people don't realize: peanuts aren't actually nuts, they're legumes. And because they grow underground, they're especially prone to mold contamination. That's where aflatoxins come in, a natural toxin produced by certain molds, and one that can be harmful to the liver over time. In young, healthy bodies, occasional exposure may not be a big deal. But for older adults, whose detox systems are already slowing down, those toxins can build up, silently taxing the liver and even increasing cancer risk over the long haul. Peanuts also tend to be high in omega-6 fats, which can promote inflammation when not balanced with enough omega-3s. Inflammation, as we now know, is a major contributor to heart disease, joint pain, and even cognitive decline. Not exactly what you want in a healthy snack. And if you're on blood thinners like warfarin? The vitamin K in peanuts can interfere with how your medication works, something Frank's doctor quickly pointed out. Even peanut butter, especially the shelf-stable kind, often comes with hydrogenated oils, added sugar, and excess salt, all of which can quietly work against heart health. Frank was surprised. He thought he had been making a smart choice. But like so many of us, he hadn't looked closely at the details. So he made a change. He switched to almond butter, no sugar, no added oils. He cut back on peanuts, keeping them as an occasional treat rather than a daily habit. Within months, his blood work improved. And maybe just as important, he felt more in control. Here's the quiet lesson peanuts teach us. Sometimes, the things we grew up trusting need a second look, especially as our bodies change. And if peanuts raised some red flags, wait until you see the next nut. It's smooth, rich, and often seen as a guilt-free treat, but for older adults, it may carry risks far beyond what most people imagine. Let's take a closer look at cashews. 7. Cashews, creamy, addictive, and diabetically dangerous. If you asked Helen, 66, what her favorite snack was, she'd smile and point to the little bowl on her kitchen counter, cashews. "I could eat these all day," she'd say. And sometimes, she nearly did. They were her go-to during afternoon TV shows, her treat after gardening, and a quiet comfort when she couldn't sleep. Creamy, slightly sweet, and so easy to grab another handful, and another. She thought she was making a healthy choice. After all, nuts are good for you, right? But Helen, like nearly 1 in 2 Americans over 65, had prediabetes. And what she didn't know was that cashews, for all their smooth texture and satisfying crunch, come with a hidden cost. Unlike almonds or walnuts, cashews contain a higher amount of carbohydrates, about 9 grams per ounce, and fewer protective fibers. That means they raise blood sugar more quickly, especially when eaten on their own. For someone like Helen, whose body was already struggling to regulate glucose, those cashews were quietly nudging her closer to type 2 diabetes. Even more surprising, cashews are high in oxalates, compounds that can bind to calcium and make it harder for the body to absorb, something that matters deeply to older adults trying to maintain bone strength. In people prone to kidney stones, oxalates can make things worse. And then there's the issue most people don't talk about. Cashews are one of the most aspirated nuts, meaning they can pose a choking risk, especially for seniors with dry mouth or swallowing difficulties. Their curved shape and slick surface can easily catch in the throat if not chewed properly. Helen also didn't know that before cashews ever make it to store shelves, they undergo heavy processing to remove urushiol, the same compound found in poison ivy. That process, while necessary, involves high heat that can damage nutrients. And if they're roasted in oil or salted heavily, which many store-bought versions are, the sodium and added fats only add more pressure on the heart. When Helen's doctor reviewed her blood sugar numbers and asked about her snacking habits, the light bulb went off. It wasn't just the cookies she occasionally baked for her grandkids, it was the daily habit she thought was healthy. So she made a shift. She swapped cashews for a few raw walnuts or dry-roasted almonds, something with less sugar impact and more fiber. It wasn't a huge change, but it made a difference. And her numbers began to improve. That's the lesson here. Just because something is natural, doesn't mean it's neutral, especially when it comes to blood sugar. So if you've been munching on cashews thinking they're guilt-free, it might be time to rethink the role they play in your routine. But what if your biggest health challenge isn't blood sugar, but weight gain, slow digestion, or gallbladder strain? Then we need to talk about the nut with the highest calorie count of all. Let's take a look at macadamias. 8. Macadamias and weight gain, the hidden metabolic trap. Jerry, 70, had always been careful with his diet. He didn't eat fast food, cut sugar years ago, and avoided heavy meals at night. But lately, he'd noticed the scale creeping up, just a pound or 2 here and there. His doctor gently warned him about weight gain after retirement, especially with a slower metabolism. "But I eat healthy," Jerry insisted. "Mostly nuts, fruits, and fish. I even gave up dessert." And he had. Except, for the small dish of macadamia nuts he kept beside his recliner. "They're healthy fats," he'd say with a shrug. "And they help me feel full." That much is true, macadamias are full of fat. But here's what many people don't realize. Macadamias are the most calorie-dense nut out there. Just 1 ounce, roughly 10 to 12 nuts, contains over 200 calories and 22 grams of fat, much of it saturated. For someone with a slower metabolism, even 2 small handfuls can quietly tip the scales over time. And it's not just about weight. That saturated fat content, about 3 grams per ounce, can raise LDL cholesterol, especially when paired with other animal fats in the diet. That puts added strain on aging arteries, which are already more vulnerable to stiffness and inflammation. Worse, macadamias can be difficult for the gallbladder to process, especially in older adults who already have sluggish digestion or undiagnosed gallstones. That rich, buttery texture? It's lovely, but for some, it can trigger bloating, discomfort, or even gallbladder attacks. Jerry had no idea. He thought he was doing something good for his body. And in moderation, macadamias can have a place, but for someone watching weight, managing cholesterol, or dealing with gallbladder issues, they may not be the gentle friend they seem to be. When he switched to a lighter nut, like pistachios, with less fat and more fiber, he didn't miss the richness as much as he expected. And over a few months, the weight gain stopped. His energy picked up. His digestion felt lighter. That's the small but important truth. Even the healthiest foods can work against you when portion size, metabolism, and personal conditions aren't taken into account. Macadamias aren't bad. But they can be a trap, especially for older adults trying to stay lean, light, and mobile. And just when you think you've figured out which nuts are too heavy, there's one more surprise. It's small. Often sprinkled on salads or blended into pesto. But behind its fancy flavor is a serious risk, especially for those on medication or managing vision health. Let's talk about pine nuts. 9. Pine nuts, the eye-damaging, drug-interacting risk. Elaine loved cooking. At 74, she still spent her weekends in the kitchen, trying new recipes and making big batches of homemade pesto for her family. One of her favorite ingredients? Pine nuts. They just give everything that fancy touch, she'd say with a smile. She toasted them lightly for pasta, sprinkled them on roasted vegetables, and added a spoonful to her morning smoothie for brain fuel. But a few weeks after a big family dinner, Elaine started noticing a strange, persistent metallic taste in her mouth. Coffee tasted bitter. Chocolate felt off. Even water didn't sit right. She thought it was a cold, or maybe a medication side effect, until her doctor asked a simple question. Have you eaten pine nuts recently? Turns out, Elaine was experiencing pine mouth syndrome, a reaction some people get after eating certain types of pine nuts, especially those not properly stored or imported from specific regions. It causes a bitter or metallic taste that can last for days, or even weeks. And while it may sound like just a nuisance, for older adults, it can be serious. That unpleasant taste often leads to loss of appetite, reduced food intake, and over time, unintended weight loss, a dangerous combination for anyone already struggling to maintain strength and nutrition in their later years. But the risks don't stop there. Pine nuts contain compounds that can interact with common medications, especially blood pressure drugs, statins, and antidepressants. These interactions aren't always flagged, but they can reduce the effectiveness of your prescriptions or lead to unwanted side effects, particularly in adults managing multiple health conditions. On top of that, pine nuts are rich in polyunsaturated fats, which, though healthy in the right context, oxidize quickly when stored improperly. Oxidized fats contribute to inflammation throughout the body and have been linked to age-related macular degeneration, the leading cause of vision loss in seniors. For someone like Elaine, who already had early-stage macular degeneration, the connection was eye-opening, literally and figuratively. She swapped pine nuts for pumpkin seeds, which still gave her crunch and nutrients, but without the metallic aftertaste or drug interactions. Her pesto? Still delicious. And her taste buds, and eyes, were grateful. Here's the takeaway. Not every gourmet ingredient is gentle on aging bodies. And sometimes, it's the tiniest things that create the biggest disruptions. That's why it matters not only what you eat, but how it fits your unique health picture, your meds, your conditions, your goals. Now that we've uncovered which nuts to embrace and which to approach with caution, there's still one more piece of the puzzle. Let's tie it all together, and I'll show you how to build a nut routine that actually supports your health every single day. 10. How to build your senior-friendly nut routine. By now, you've probably realized something important. Not all nuts are created equal, and after 60, the way your body reacts to them can change in surprising ways. But that doesn't mean you have to give them up. Far from it. The key is knowing how to choose, how much to eat, and how to listen to your body. Let me tell you about George and Lillian, a couple in their early 70s who decided to take their health more seriously after George's minor stroke scare. They didn't want a complicated diet. They just wanted to feel better, think clearer, and stay active for their grandkids. So they sat down, watched videos, read a few articles, maybe even one like this, and together, they created what they called their nut routine. Simple, steady, and suited just for them. Here's what it looked like. Morning. With breakfast, they added 15 almonds, raw, unsalted, still in the skin, for bone strength and steady energy. Midday snack. A small handful of walnut halves, about 6 to 8 pieces, to support brain health, especially after reading or doing puzzles. Afternoon pick-me-up. Pistachios in the shell, about 1 ounce. The shelling slowed them down, and the crunch gave them satisfaction without over-snacking. And it helped George's blood pressure. Evening, optional. Just 1 Brazil nut, no more, no less, for thyroid support and a calm, steady metabolism. And just as important as what they included, they became mindful of what they limited. Peanuts were moved from the daily snack jar to an occasional weekend treat. Cashews were replaced with lightly roasted chickpeas. Macadamias? Saved for holidays. Pine nuts? Swapped for sunflower or pumpkin seeds. They didn't feel restricted. In fact, they felt empowered. They started sleeping better. Lillian said her hands didn't ache as much in the mornings. George's numbers began to improve. And, maybe best of all, they had something they did together, something small, but consistent. Here's the quiet truth. Health isn't built in big, dramatic decisions. It's built in small, steady habits, like a handful of the right nuts at the right time. So if you're ready to start your own routine, here's a simple framework. Choose 2 to 3 nuts that match your health goals: bone, brain, blood pressure, thyroid. Stick to proper portions. Most nuts are powerful in small amounts. Store them well, in a cool, dark place or fridge, especially walnuts and Brazil nuts. Avoid added salt, oils, and sugars that can undo the benefits. And most of all, pay attention to how you feel, because your body knows what's working. Now, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. What nut surprised you the most today? Was it something you thought was helping, but might be hurting? Or one you've been avoiding, that might actually help? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this helpful, consider sharing it with someone you care about. Because sometimes, a simple nut can make all the difference in someone's health journey. Thank you for spending this time with me. Here's to your health, your clarity, and the power of knowing just what your body needs.